Tropical Storm Bret, a hurricane threat on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for June 20th. So the Atlantic back in action, and now a named storm to its name, the number 24 for the world so far this year. We're also still looking at the remnants of Biparjoy, which are still active over central northern India. Elsewhere, a few other areas of interest to examine. In the Atlantic, day 20 of Atlantic hurricane season, of course we've got Bret, which will probably become a hurricane as it approaches the Lesser Antilles, and behind it now we're giving a high chance for another area of interest. These systems coming thick and fast very early on in this season. Could be another named storm there. In the Eastern Pacific though, it's the opposite. It's extremely quiet and very late actually compared to average. Day 38 of hurricane season, and still we've seen nothing and no areas of interest now to look at in the next 7 days. In the Western Pacific, we're still looking out for a 10% chance in the Philippine Sea, not far from the Philippine Islands themselves, to the east there. Small chance right now, and in the Indian Ocean nothing else apart from the remnants of Biparjoy, which are still really rotating nicely. Bits of convection are still blowing up, and it's passed to the southeast of New Delhi now and is continuing slightly eastwards. It's going to keep going, and eventually it'll be the Himalayas that kill it off if it keeps going like this, but it is still traceable. Looking at satellite imagery of the last 24 hours, look out for any red zones on this chart, which will show you high amounts of rainfall. 1 or 2 spots over India by the looks of things, but in general it's been a calm 24 hours across the world. Of course, underneath Bret, it's probably a little bit more than what's being shown there. And here is the latest satellite imagery of Bret right now, a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. To be honest, it could be stronger than that already when you look at that imagery. And we expect a steady intensification spell over the next 48 hours or longer, and it will probably be near hurricane strength by the time we do get to Thursday morning, and then it could go on to become a mid-range category 1 as it moves through the Lesser Antilles into the Eastern Caribbean. We'd be pretty surprised if it does get stronger than Category 1, especially if it does take that more southerly route. Earlier on, you remember when we were looking at model runs and it was projecting a stronger storm, but the key thing there was that it was recurving as it did so. A lack of recurvature would favour a weaker storm peak, but we still expect it to reach Category 1 hurricane status. If it does recurve or even go a little bit further north, we could be looking at a slightly stronger storm. You can also see that area of interest behind it on this imagery as well, both of them looking pretty decent, but Bret particularly alright on that imagery. Sea surface temperatures around the world look like this. The Eastern Pacific there getting really warm in a few spots south of Mexico. It's just waiting for that first named storm. 32 degrees possibly in a few areas there, and the ocean waters are warming a little bit as well. Atlantic Ocean obviously looking good. Around Bret, temperatures are currently around 27 degrees Celsius, but they're going to rise as the storm gets closer to the Lesser Antilles, and those temperatures near Barbados and the like around about 28-29 degrees Celsius. Even warmer in the Gulf and in the Western Caribbean. In the Western Pacific, really warm waters extending quite far north now, a little slick there to the north of the Mariana Islands, and also around the Philippines. Very warm temperatures there, 31 to 32 degrees all around the islands, and 28 to 30 degrees extending up through Taiwan. North Indian Ocean, not looking too bad considering the cyclone activity that we've had of late. A few little cool spots in the remnants of, in the residue of Biparjoy, but in general those temperatures looking very good, 28 degrees minimum. Southwest Indian Ocean, of course, we're in the off season now and still struggling with those temperatures. Same too for the Australian region, only barely 26 degrees around the northern Australian coastline. And in the South Pacific as well, that line is quite far north compared to, of course, what we see in summer. It's out of season down there now. These are the sea surface temperature anomalies, and you'll note first of all the eastern Atlantic around 3 degrees above average right now, which is key probably to why these storms are doing so well. Really certainly a helper at any rate. Eastern Pacific well above average as well in that area near Mexico, and the El Nino effect becoming more apparent on the equatorial line there. Western Pacific slightly below average possibly, and the North Indian Ocean is slightly above. Here's the Atlantic right now. Look at the oceanic heat content. Western Caribbean really getting down there, and the main development region also a few little spots where storms could capitalize. Eastern Pacific there, a decent trail extending from the Gulf of Tehuantepec out over the ocean, but not too far, but looking okay. Western Pacific, of course, no problems there. Certainly lots of potential. GFS computer model then for the next 5 days. This is what it's showing now for these two systems. Both of them form on the GFS scenario and on most others, let's be honest. And Bret there moving through the Caribbean, not far from Guadeloupe probably there, maybe Dominica, and then moving into the eastern Caribbean. Very similar to the National Hurricane Center forecast tracker actually. And actually interestingly there, I think it's tapered off that peak intensity a little bit and is down to borderline hurricane rather than mid-range category 1. Western Pacific, watch out for one or two little systems that might pop up here. The first one that we're obviously looking at, but now the GFS is throwing a spanner into the works, and a little rotation spotted there near the western islands of the Visayas in the Philippines. So could be two competing centers at that point by the time we get towards day 4 and 5, and that could complicate matters there and might result in weaker systems or no formation at all. Looking out for the rainfall expectations in the Atlantic here, and you can see that this trail extends from the east. That's obviously the track of Bret reaching the area, encroaching over those islands, and could spark quite a lot of rainfall, which on these islands can lead to significant flash flooding issues. GFS suggesting there that rainfall could reach around 12 inches over Guadeloupe, which is 300 millimeters, and around 8 inches over Puerto Rico, which is around 200 millimeters. Smaller amounts on some of the smaller islands, but in general that's the maximum ceiling that we're looking at the moment. Also, significant threat from this storm will be in the rip currents and tides as the storm gets closer, and even at a distance it could impact some of these coastlines even if they miss a landfall. Into the longer range, day 5 to 10. What happens next then with these two systems? Well, Bret weakens, but it's still traceable. The other system stays out at sea and recurves properly. And then GFS does a little funny, and they both do a little dance together there, and very odd interaction between those two systems, but it looks like they still come out of it alive even after pretty much crossing paths. Never really seen anything like that before, but either way, wherever the energy ends up, it will be steered north and northeastwards probably later on, and then perhaps Atlantic Canada could be looking out for something. Eastern Pacific, could this be something on the way? Well, yes, actually it is. There is the potential on day 5 to 10 of something finally starting up, and not just a little something, quite a big something there. A significant hurricane, category 1 status there in the last days of June. Of course, quite different to what we were looking at on yesterday's model run, so there's no run consistency yet, but watch out for that, and perhaps we may be able to get a little bit more confident in us finally seeing our first significant storms there. That's all the serious stuff done. Scan the barcode and you can take a look at the Force 13 merch store with all of our usual items, including full season and individual storm animations at your request, and our still waiting for Hone t-shirt, which doesn't look like it's going to go out of fashion anytime soon. In the Scilly range, that's day 10 to 16. What happens to those Atlantic systems? Well, they both become post-tropical, they both spank the eastern coast of Canada, and then look at this, maybe another system coming in through the main development region into the eastern Caribbean. It really looks like we are entering open season in the Atlantic way earlier than we normally do. Usually it's around early August that we look for these systems developing in that main development region, but there you have it. That would be C and D at this rate, which is, you know, not that far behind 2020 in terms of the naming list, but we'll have to wait and see. Eastern Pacific looks like this. First that hurricane which starts to weaken again, and then a much smaller system there that could be more dangerous along the coast of Mexico there, and then it looks like it gets completely consumed by that landfall and just completely loses itself. So potentially two systems there in the Eastern Pacific. That's going very long range now, so keep looking out there for that potential run consistency. That's probably the main takeaway from this model. And moving on to the Western Pacific, right at the end of the model run, there is a little something that starts to appear properly, but of course once again that caveat that it is very late on in the run. I mean, it's over 2 weeks away. Right at the end there's a system appearing near the Mariana Islands and becomes quite a compact typhoon right at the end of that 16-day period. What's that, July 5th, 6th, something like that? Very far away from where we are right now, so I wouldn't give it much thought at this juncture, but there it is. You can talk about all of this on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general weather chat. We also have plenty of other places on that server where you can chat about other items as well. And we've got over 3,400 people nattering away about the tropics over there. Feel free to join. Well, on June 20th, 2008, another interesting season for typhoon activity, and another strong typhoon was washing ashore the Philippines. It was Fengshan, which was striking the Visayas region, and I think it reached its peak intensity actually in the middle of those islands. There's an image on late on that day, on June 20th, where it had a decent eye feature just on the northern side of the island of Panay and continued westwards and then started to recurve northwestwards. Strong category 3 at its peak intensity. Back to today, 24 storms so far. Looks like we'll be seeing more soon. The next name in the Atlantic this year is Cindy. In the Eastern Pacific, Adrian, and in the Central Pacific we are still waiting for Hone, although Adrian's becoming a bit of a running joke as well now. In the Western Pacific, next name is Talim. In the North Indian Ocean, it's Tej. And it doesn't look like we'll be seeing any of those just for a little while yet. Time running out for the Southwest Indian Ocean. The names roll over in 10 days, but until then, the next name will be Gizani. In the Australian region, it's Jasper. And in the South Pacific, it's Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. You'll be redirected to the live stream now if you join the premiere, and we'll see you again soon.